Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Norville Barrington. I'm the Vice President of Communications for the National Black MBA Metro New York chapter, also the founder of bccelerator, Advancing Black Entrepreneurship, where we look at how to rethink your strategies and look at your ideas to make them into a business plan that will help you propel, whether it's operations, marketing, getting that SBA loans in general, and also looking at it from an angel investor perspective. This conversation today, on behalf of the National Black MBA and bccelerator, focuses on how we can look at rethinking your strategy in terms of your legal and structural strategy for your business. At a time of COVID, most businesses, such as even myself, we're looking at how we can look at the opportunities to rethink how we're legally structured. The strategies behind it are going to be very critical, not only to reposition your business plan, but also what are the steps that are going to be needed in order to propel going forward. Conversation today is going to feature Melanie Cunningham of Melanie Cunningham Law Firm, PC. One of the things I want to touch on, and one of the things that we're going to highlight in this particular session, and what you've seen throughout the day, is that it's very critical for Black-owned businesses and entrepreneurs in this uncertain times to really make sure that as the weeks, months come forth, that you are looking at your new recovery plan. And this session is going to help you with that. Melanie Cunningham owns her business of intellectual property practice, where she focuses on giving small business owners such as herself a peace of mind in operations of their business today and planning for the future. And her approach includes helping entrepreneurs establish a strong foundation of their business, protect their brand and assets, and safeguard their legacy, which is very critical at this time. Melanie returned to a private practice after more than a decade working for global financial institutes because she had a passion and a knack for making legal principles user-friendly for everyday people. And in that respect, you have to understand that we don't want to make things complicated for you, and Melanie definitely understands that. Plus, she helps her clients with the legal, proactive solutions and predictable basis that helps them engage in her private consulting firm, which of course is going to save you a lot of money in terms of significant savings, and you could really avoid some of the over fees from most law firms. Melanie excels in making the law accessible, compatible, and stress-free for business. For those of you who are very busy and inundated with the day-to-day operations of a small business owner. Melanie's a graduate from Emory University School of Law and the Robert H. Smith School of Business at the University of Maryland at College Park. Without further ado, for this session, I want to welcome Melanie into the broadcast booth. Melanie, how are you doing today?
I'm great, Norville. Thank you for having me today.
Good. And I know that there's going to be a lot that you're going to touch on. And in this time of COVID, and even post-COVID, we want to be able to really help our audience understand what are the skills and what are the things that they're going to be needed to look at in terms of rethinking how their legal structure and their strategy is going forward.
Got it. Now that's it's so critical, and this symposium couldn't come at a more urgent time. So I'm really grateful to be here today. Thank you, Norville, for the introduction and inviting me today. Thank you to the chapter for even presenting and doing this type of education for our community. It's so critical at this juncture that small businesses, as we're finding ourselves in the results of the different programs after COVID, and who didn't receive funds, who received funds, and all that's happening, and we don't know what's coming down the pipeline. So there's a lot of different moving parts, but one thing we know for sure is that, and that I'm grateful for this symposium, is that we have to shore up our businesses, and let's just get ready for what the future holds. Today, I will be discussing just how do we should rethink our business structures. Um, my name is Melanie Cunningham again. My practice is mostly virtual, and I really started my firm to support entrepreneurs. So even while I was in corporate America, it's something that I did on the side just because I had a passion for it, and realized the importance of working with entrepreneurs who are generally extremely creative, really good at what they do, and just needed some help around setting the legal foundation for their business and also protecting their brand. My information is there if you want to get in touch with me later, because um, I understand as a small business owner myself, you can Google and research, and sometimes you just need to talk to an advisor to toss around your ideas and really set you on the right path. Um, and so while my firm isn't a traditional law firm, it's mostly virtual, and we kind of operate a little bit differently. I do have to do the lawyerly stereotypical disclaimer, and just before we get started, just to say that this is really just for informational purposes, to get you thinking about what you might need to amend, or what you might need to start doing in your businesses. So it's just for information. It's not intended to substitute actually speaking with a legal advisor. Um, so let's jump right in and get started. We're going to start with just an overview of the business structures. I know this is probably not new to many of you, but I think it sets the foundation for the rest of our discussion today. So first we have, our sole proprietorships and partnerships. Sole proprietorships, it's really just an individual conducting business without incorporating or forming officially with any state. You make something, someone wants to pay you for it, or you provide a service and someone pays you for it, and you're in business. That's just what a sole proprietorship is. A partnership, very similar to a sole proprietorship, except for it's more than one. So it's when a group of individuals decide to come together to conduct business without forming officially. You have different types of partnerships. You could have a general partnership, which is just what I described, or a limited partnership, or a limited liability partnership. And the differences in the partnerships really hinges on the amount of liability that a partner wants to take on, and also the level of management control. So in general, a limited partnership will have one general partner with unlimited liability, and all the other partners will have limited liability. Um, like I mentioned, the partners with the limited liability, they also tend to have limited control of the company, which of course would be documented in any partnership agreement. Um, Limited liability partnerships, you generally see that with professional businesses, or businesses that contain professionals like architects, lawyers, accountants. It's not a structure that is available in every state, but I guess the pro, or the idea behind that, is that each partner is not liable for another partner's misconduct or negligence. Again, it's a less formal type of business structure, but you should have a partnership agreement before starting this type of business. And next we have limited liability companies, and it's really the best of both worlds of a sole proprietorship or partnership, if you have more than one, and a corporation. It can either be member managed, meaning that All of the business owners, known as members, manage the company, or the members might decide that we'll own it, but we will hire a manager to manage the operations of the business. It is a pass-through entity, like a sole proprietorship and partnership, meaning that the business entity does not pay taxes. Rather, the owners pay the taxes on their personal income tax returns. But similar to a corporation, you can shield your personal assets from liability that the business might incur. Corporations, I think we all know, we're pretty used to corporations. Those tend to be the large companies, but they could also be the small companies. It is a type of business structure that is completely separate from its owners. It is like, in our tax structure and our rules and laws, corporations are almost treated like a person. So it is a separate entity from you, the individual. It also comes in different varieties that we won't get into too much today, but you have your benefit corporations, different types of corporations, but it really varies by states. But everyone knows in general what a corporation is. So now we know the different types of structures. So again, a sole proprietorship and partnership, you kind of just get started and you start conducting business without any real formalities, without filing anything with the state. The most you might do if you have a sole proprietorship or partnership, if you have given your business a name, you might need to register that doing business as, so that DBA or assumed name, depending on the state, you might want to register that with the state. The other formality is opening a separate bank account for the funds that are generated from your business. And that's pretty much it. The other structures, so a limited liability company and corporations, will have different, a little more paperwork involved. And so that still doesn't answer, how should I operate as a business owner? That's probably your first real decision, is selecting the right business entity. And so just a quick rundown of what you should be thinking about. Now, this list isn't exhaustive, but these are the things you should be thinking about. Of course, your business goals and your marketing plans, whether you'll have partners and investors or a combination of both. You want to think about your earnings and deductions. So maybe you're already in business and you're thinking about, okay, maybe I do need to incorporate, or maybe I need to change from an LLC to a corporation. You want to think about and consider the amount your business has earned and available deductions. The number one concern is probably tax planning and savings. The next concern for most business owners is their liability exposure. And then, of course, there's the cost, the administrative costs of having a separate business entity. One thing you should know that, as your business evolves and grows, it's perfectly fine to change the entity you're operating under. So I always like to tell business owners is that you need to make a decision, be thoughtful, make a decision, and know that it might change. So it's not something that you want to have kind of that analysis paralysis where you don't know what decision to make. But here's what you need to think about. I also like to say, when I go through this exercise with business owners, quite often it's having a conversation also with a CPA. because they can help guide and help you make an informed decision. So even though it might not be the first concern, I think your business goals, we should start there. What type of business do you want? The reasons that entrepreneurs go into business vary, and so do our goals. So some want to generate, and they're planning on generating 7 figures annually. Or perhaps you really want a lifestyle business. So reaching that 7 figure mark isn't the goal. Um, you know, are you funding this venture yourself, or do you need to raise money? That depends on the type of business you're starting and where you're starting from. Do you want to be able to bring in shareholders or investors? Um, you know, Another thing that business owners may not think about, because we never really want to think about it, is what do you want to happen to this business when you die? So some people start a business, quite often, a lot of people, a lot of my clients, to leave a legacy for their family. And so if you're starting, and if you remain a sole proprietorship, that generally dies when the sole proprietor dies. So that's another thought. I can't say it enough, but you want to keep in mind that your business structure that you start out with may not meet your needs in years to come. Um, Many sole proprietors evolve into some other form of business, like a partnership or corporation, as the company grows and their needs grow. I also want to say it's not a terrible idea to start as a sole proprietorship, because you may want to test the idea, or maybe your business is a side hustle to your full-time career, and so you're kind of just you're doing it on the side to see if you like being a business owner, or maybe you're testing your business idea. It's perfectly fine to start there. You also should be thinking about, or what would inform your decision is whether you will have partners or investors. So, obviously, if you decide, okay, I don't want to be a solopreneur any longer, adding a partner will change the structure. So maybe you remain a partnership if you still want to keep it simple. Um, the most flexible business structure would be then just a partnership or an LLC. But think about it. Are you moving to, from one to two, or to a third party or fourth, because you are adding more services and you found the right experts? Or are you doing that because you need more capital? You want to think about what role they are playing in this business that you started. If you have, a handful of passive investors, maybe your family, close friends, then a partnership is perhaps not a terrible idea if you still want that simplicity and flexibility. But if you have many passive investors, you might want to, partnerships is probably not the way to go. You probably want something a little more formal, like an LLC. Earnings and deductions. So here's where I always lean on my CPAs that I know, to get their guidance. How profitable are you? This is something you should be considering if you're changing your current structure. Um, you know, for example, there's the qualified business income deduction, which is available to business owners of pass-through entities. So that's the sole proprietorships, the partnerships, the LLCs. Those are pass-through entities. And just to remind you again, that means that the business doesn't pay taxes. The profits and the taxes are handled on the personal income tax return. So if you have one of those type of entities, you have this qualified business income deduction or QBI deduction to consider. But if you're a high income earner, then you may not qualify because you have to consider all the income. So these are the things that you want to map out and think about in selecting a structure. Stay a sole prop or convert to another structure. And so this, like I mentioned before, the tax planning is truly probably one of tax planning or savings and liability exposure are probably the main concerns for anyone thinking about going into business. One, we all are thinking about our taxes. We all want to save as much as possible on our taxes. And so, as I said before, those pass-through entities, you're paying it on your personal tax returns. But you need to, here's where you think about the current tax rate. So, and again, I'm not a CPA, but I kind of, this is some of the things that I talk about with people who are thinking about forming a business officially. Look at the tax rate. So at this time, the corporate tax rate is a flat 21%. Individual tax rates are anywhere between 10 and 37%. So how much are you bringing in from all of your sources of income? This is critical if you're an employee for another firm and now you've started this other business, because many of us, we start something and transition out of our former careers. So you might be bumping up, and if this venture is successful, into that higher tax bracket as an individual. Then of course we all know, even if we can't explain it, that corporations get to retain some kind of way a lot of their income. Because of what they have this one side where it's a double taxation. So all that means is that the corporation pays taxes, or at least they're supposed to, and the individual, the shareholders, they also pay taxes. So, whether they're an employee or just an investor, they also pay taxes. So we have a double taxation. But you might look at it and in consultation with your CPA, realize that forming as a corporation might be a better fit for your company, what you're doing in your business. Corporations can retain some of their income, lowering their tax bill. So what that means is that, corporations pay income tax on their profits after expenses. No profit, no income tax is paid. So it doesn't seem to make a lot of sense for regular people like myself, but those are the rules, those are the regulations. So it's an option. It is something to think about. Also think about, I mentioned, if part of your plans mean that you will need to raise money, maybe a significant amount of money. This is where, corporations also look attractive despite, what we might think about the taxes, because corporations appear to be more viable businesses. So another concern, something else to think about as you're considering what entity to form as. Maybe business owners are thinking about how to avoid paying too many or too much employment taxes. So this is something that, again, You need to consult with an accountant, but just know that pass-through entities, again, that is the sole prop, and the partnerships, LLCs, pay self-employment taxes calculated on which the calculate it's 15.3% of profits. If you're the owner of a corporation, you're not self-employed technically, you are an owner employee. So a conversation for another time with your advisors. Next, we're always concerned, and it should be a big concern, maybe more than the tax planning and savings, in my opinion, is the liability exposure. And that really depends on what products you're selling, the services, and where you're located. So again, operating as a sole prop makes a ton of sense when you're just starting out. But as you grow, you do want to think about, you should be thinking about your exposure as an operator of a business. So of course we have, and we take different precautions. We buy insurance, we have contracts, but also selecting the right entity should factor into that. So, business is inherently risky, but you do all these different things to try to mitigate that risk. For example, if your business involves real estate or rental properties, and this, it could just be you as an individual, or maybe your family or your friends, you decide to pull your money together and invest in real estate. That's a great business. Liabilities could arise from the contractors you work with, your tenants, the guests of your tenants. Even if you own just one real estate property, you might want to think about holding that property under an LLC. It's pretty serious and important consideration. Are you in a business that, or where there is a risk of injury? So, arguably a business owner or a barber shop with, a brick and mortar has more risk than, a coach who works virtually, just wherever their laptop is, or even someone who's a maybe a seamstress or a tailor, and they kind of just work one-to-one with people, and they work from home and design clothes and repair clothing. Less risky than a salon owner, barber shop, where they usually have a location and they're encountering people. Also if you're a caterer and dealing with food and dealing with public, that is a little riskier than someone who, like a coach, may not need an office, may only work virtually. It's a thought. You have to weigh those risks and what's important to you. And while, yes, you have insurance, a business entity is also something else you should think about and consider. Lastly, and I know this is always a thought, is just the administrative costs of having a business. So you have the thing that you do extremely well, and just the day-to-day, maybe you're managing a team or just your clients and business development, and so that's your time is devoted there. But then also having an entity, it's the record keeping, the paperwork, the filing fees. So the filing fees and the requirements vary by state, but there usually is a fee. You also need to have either, in some states it's called the Articles of Organization or Certificate of Formation or Articles of Incorporation. So it's Even if you just use the form that's on the state's website, there's still a fee. There's a fee, then you have your bylaws, if it's a corporation, or operating agreement, if it's an LLC. It's maintaining those records. It's also if you are hoping to have that shield of your personal assets. So you really want to create that separation from you and your corporation. It will require time and money in making sure that you keep everything separate, your funds, record keeping, your accounts, from you in the business. So then there's also the cost of, okay, once you're up and running, you have, in some states, it's an annual statement with a pretty nominal filing fee, but a fee nonetheless, or it's a biennial statement to pay. It's a thought. There is a cost involved in operating a business. If you're in New York and you start an LLC, an extra cost is this publication requirement. So you start your LLC, and LLCs are required to publish in 2 newspapers in the county that they're operating for 6 weeks, announcing that they've started this business, this LLC. So publishing with a newspaper, that ad isn't free, and then you have to submit your affidavit with the state. So these are all things that you have to weigh. Again, and just to highlight, it depends really on your business goals. So understandably, that first year, maybe the first 2-3 years, you're just trying to get started, and you're just trying to, grow and be profitable. But as you really look long term, what are my goals? Where do I see the business 5-10 years? Am I starting a tech company requiring a lot of capital? Am I keeping it small? Keep your goals in front of you, and I hope this is just get you thinking about what you should weigh and what's important to you. It will vary from person to person in each type of business. So if there's any questions, and we can maybe just jumpstart our discussion.
Melanie, thank you very much. And a number of points that you highlighted are very critical in these times. And one of the things that most businesses, such as myself, as going through entrepreneurship and many others, there's many pitfalls that we face. What are some of the pitfalls that people face, especially when you look at converting businesses over from maybe one structural area to another structural area, and how your firm helps in that?
I think if I was to think about all of the things that can go wrong, and that's kind of how lawyers, unfortunately, that's where we're trained to spot issues. It is engaging in business with other people, so taking on a partner, investor, and not really being clear on what their role is. Starting that business and not keeping the proper records. So, for example, I have a client that I'm working with now, and that partner came to me because they were looking to, it's still a very new company. They started as a corporation with investors, but one of the investors was more of a partner investor. They were looking to dissolve that and start an LLC. And this is all what, they consulted with their CPA and all of that. And as I began to dig, the main owner, my client, didn't have the paperwork, so she didn't have that. It wasn't clear on, how she was working with this other investor. And so it's, how do we give the money back? How do we do this properly and make sure that they don't have a say in this new venture? So that's a long way of getting to that. Um, when you think about that and map it out, and whether maybe you don't start an LLC or corporation. If you remember during the talk, I talked about, partnerships. Okay, you don't have to file anything with the state, but you should have a partnership agreement. So not being firm on, I guess, the vision and how you really want that business to operate and who's doing what in the business is probably the largest pitfall. I think not working with or consulting with an accountant, because they can look at, accountant and one that does that kind of tax strategy. If you've been operating and kind of handling that on your own, so now you need to find someone, or it would behoove you to find someone who can actually put it on paper and really map it out and see, does it make sense for you, do those to convert to some other form, from LLC to corporation or vice versa. Um, they can really look at it but they need that data. So not doing that, not talking to someone ahead of time, is probably the main issue that I find people fall into, is improper documentation and not speaking to a lawyer and an accountant, quite frankly.
Here at bccelerator, when we write business plans for clients, we often talk about the teams that need to be a part of, in order to make sure that as you're looking to operationalize your business plan, you have a proper team. And one of the things that we do highlight here is, if you do not have a lawyer, um, uh, there's going to be some, maybe some challenges that you're going to face.
Mhm.
And some of the challenges, as you mentioned, are things that may come up. When we look at structural plans, there's contingency plans that we have to actually write in to make sure that if we get in that loan, that investor or that institute knows that you've thought about these things. So when you
Mhm.
work with your clients, what are some of the benefits of working with a boutique firm such as yourself that focuses on, small businesses, as opposed to maybe online firms or notable firms that maybe just give out documents and PDFs?
Right. And I think you just nailed it there, is that, and I don't think many people realize that some of those technology firms, and even I didn't until I started doing some digging, you're often not working with a legal advisor. So it's you telling them whatever, and they just kind of plug it in for you. But what I realized that most small business owners want and deserve, is that advice. They want the counseling, the opportunity to, speak to someone and share what they're thinking about, where they're going, their concerns, and then helping them. And they have this plan, so they've worked with, maybe they've been in an accelerator, or they have a business coach or consultant, and so they have this plan, and just the opportunity to speak to someone else. So it's much less when you're working with, boutique firm like my firm. It's really it's more about the relationship. So my concern and what I hope is that I am your advisor on your way to growing. And I want to grow with you and help you, grow. So that's probably the largest benefit. It's that this is beyond paperwork. The paperwork is important, uh, and it's also, um, the advice that's important. It's having someone, because I mentioned, you are consumed with developing your business, serving your clients. And maybe, it's easy for that kind of research and understanding that documentation. It's easy to put that to the side because it can be time consuming. But you need to know it before something happens. So working with a boutique firm really helps you remain, proactive as you grow in your business.
So I grew up in Brooklyn, now in Jersey, went to school in Jersey, and I see the differences between New York and New Jersey in terms of opportunities. And now we see more and more becoming more of a regional player as opposed to looking at it from a state by state basis. So when I look at business opportunities and looking at like demographics in terms of opportunities, there are a lot of areas that are very similar to one another, such as maybe a Newark and Brooklyn at a certain point in time. You have the Pattersons, you have the Montclairs, West Oranges,
Mhm.
things of that nature. But then you also have the Westchesters of the world as well. So when you look at it from a regional aspect, when a person's looking to look at opportunities, what are some of the things they need to consider when looking at it from a domestic business and then converting it over to maybe a foreign business, depending on where that business is domiciled at?
Yeah, so similar to you, I grew up in the Bronx, but I live in North Jersey now. I'm licensed in New York, and so, um, but everything's virtual now, and there's nothing if you live in the five boroughs, North Jersey and Westchester, you can move around uh, New York, New Jersey, Connecticut, maybe even PA
Absolutely, yeah.
quite easily. So it's I'm incorporated in New York because that's where my license is. I think, but there's also to take advantage of certain opportunities, you may need to register to do business in these different states. And so it says foreign, and you're thinking, oh, like international. No, it's really just one state over. You might need to
Yeah.
register in that state. And that you're really thinking about, well, okay, here's my business plan. Here's what I do. Is there a real opportunity there? If there really is an opportunity in a state that's not where you reside, it's worth it to register in that state for sure.
And when you look at it from that perspective, you also are looking at it from an IP perspective. Ideas come from everywhere and
Yep.
can be applicable from location to location. And now that we have a more of a virtual presence, you want to be able to protect yourself. So when you look at it from a IP perspective, what are some misconceptions about IP that small businesses have? And where are some of the opportunities that businesses can really start honing in terms of making sure they protect their assets in that manner?
Yeah, IP is probably, I love IP. It's probably my favorite thing that I do. I think the main misconception is that entrepreneurs may not realize that they actually have IP. And they may not realize that that is like your main business asset. That's the thing that you're selling. That's the thing that, as you're growing your brand and your reputation, all those things, if you ever want to sell that business, that's what a buyer is buying, your intellectual property. So it's realizing that you have it. Um, Maybe it's a patent, which of course we know protects inventions, trademarks, which, it's your business name, your branding, your slogans, your logos. Those slogans and first of all, I feel like Black people, we're some of the most creative people in the world. And we come up with these, really, we come up with these slogans, taglines that then go viral. And I'm pretty sure that, we're not getting paid for it the way we should.
Nope.
So it's that. Then you have your copyrights, but you really have to think broadly about what you've created. So we know music, lyrics, books, movies. It's a lot of different things. You really have to think of everything that you created and analyze and take an inventory of it and think about, should I seek federal protection for this thing? It could be, so you have the patents, trademarks, and copyrights. Depending on how much money you anticipate generating from it, how important it is. So you'll want to seek protection, give you stronger rights. But you might also have things like a secret formula, a customer list, um, certain algorithms that are trade secrets. And so there's no federal protection available, but you really need to keep it secret. And there's ways that you keep it secret, limiting it to people that need to know in your organization, contracts. Like the best example of that is, the Coca-Cola formula. Like there's rumors, I think maybe only 2 people in the world know the formula from beginning to end. But listen, Coke's been around for a long time, so sometimes we take we take those lessons from those type of corporations. But it
Absolutely.
is critical to protect what you have. And I think you mentioned, how everything's online and virtual. It's so easy to, if you're not careful, for someone to come along and swipe what you've created. And if they're a faster marketer, they can blow it up before you do. So you need to do that. You need to protect what you've created. Small business owners don't realize, that's the thing that you're selling. If you want to sell the business completely at the end, you have a stronger negotiation position if you own the IP, but also licensing. So you've created a thing and maybe you don't want to give it all away, but you can license for a fee. Um, your work for other businesses or individuals to use. So these are all things to consider and that I help entrepreneurs really think about in their business as they're setting the foundation and also protecting their brand.
And you mentioned a lot in regards to IP and us at National Black MBA Accelerator. We focused on IP and we talked about the importance of IP. But we also want to touch on one part which is very critical at this time, which is contracting. Fiscal calendars, years are going to start. Fiscal calendars. I'm sorry.
Okay.
Sorry. Let me just say that again.
Okay.
IP has been very critical to the way we think and the way that we need to kind of reset our minds in terms of what opportunities may lie. And one aspect that's coming up right now is going to be contracting. Many city, state, federal municipalities are going to be looking at contracting for MWBE certification, people who are looking to operate or start their business within the next quarter or two. How does your firm work with companies that are looking to obtain contracts, especially when you get the nuances of the RFP process, and even looking at it from a perspective of, well, how are you managing your assets to make sure that you can protect yourself to get the contract and also execute the contract once it's awarded?
Okay, yeah, that is a great question. I have to admit that it wasn't until I stepped into full-time entrepreneurship that I really got a really understanding about this whole contracting world. And so I started educating myself around that and what all that means for a small business and how that can really help a small business in developing their business and helping them do what it is that they're good at, is to work with local, state, or federal contractors. I'm myself am currently in the certification process, starting with New York State, and it is a ton of paperwork. It's you really have to understand what they're asking for and follow instructions and make sure you complete and have all your ducks in a row. Um, Part of that, I feel like I might have. I'm really experienced that is okay. I have this legal hat on, but I also have this compliance experience. So I'm used to looking at, okay, what's the regulation? What do we need to do to meet whatever that is? Um, you do need to understand what your business is. Have you filed the right documentation? So have you registered in the states that you're doing business in? Um, do you pay the annual fee or, to submit that annual statement or biennial if, you're in New York? Um, Are you doing those things? Do you have those tax records? And so, yeah, I um positioned to help walk an entrepreneur through that process. Your IP that you, if your IP becomes a part of whatever the service you're bidding on, you want to make sure that you have protected that thing. Um, and some processes are longer than others. You know, the patent process can be pretty long. The next would be trademarks. It um, can be a fairly long process simply because, you know, when you submit anything to the government, it just it just takes months to do anything. And then there's, you know, a whole examination period. Um, so if you haven't done those things, you want to get it started as soon as possible. Um, because that is your, even if you're doing business with the government, you want to protect your assets. Even though that's a, you know, a wonderful opportunity to work with the government from a financial standpoint.
Now, we from a National Black MBA Accelerator perspective, uh, we we understand that a lot of businesses are going through a lot. As we close this portion of our segment, what are some of the things that you want to leave with our audience and your firm?
Yeah, I want to just, you know, I have to say, you know, in Norval, you know, read my introduction and bio, um, and I really and truly feel that I am particularly called to those first generation entrepreneurs like myself. So I know what it is to kind of, you have a dream, you have the idea, you have the experience to run a business, to own a business. And we all just need to come along together and help one another. My background, I come from a working class family, you know, and I think about it even now, especially the last few weeks with the last few months with COVID, and in the last few weeks with the uprisings, and um, where I remain hopeful for change. I'm reminded of how I am, you know, the granddaughter of sharecroppers, and then working class family, and then, you know, and then I've had these different educational opportunities, and now I'm right in the boat with you and just starting these businesses. And this is where it's one piece of the puzzle, having economic control. And so um, I remain hopeful. I know we can do it. Like I mentioned, we are some of the most creative and brilliant people in the world, and we need to uh, take a hold of that and really stand on that. And so I'm just thrilled and excited about this symposium, and I'm looking forward to it, um, to learn about the opportunities out there and to just get ready. I am all about, um, so I'm not a litigator, and I always come from a proactive position. And so let's get ready. Let's get ready.
Let's get ready, and we
Yep.
are going to hit the ground running. Melanie Cunningham, I want to thank you so much. Thank you and your firm, and for the nuggets, and actually the huge gold mines of opportunities that we see, especially making sure that we not only
Yep.
look at our legal structure and strategy, but how we protect our assets as well. Thank you so much, Melanie.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
Now, on behalf of National Black MBA Metro New York chapter and BCcelerator, I want to thank you for watching this session. We want to make sure that as you look at your legal structure and look at your strategies going forward, that you consider some of the information that was given. We're going to have more announcements within this telecast regarding how you're going to get in contact with Melanie, her firm, and also how you'll be able to position yourself moving forward, especially as you want to make sure that legally that you have the right information available to you. On behalf of National Black MBA and BCcelerator, Advancing Black Entrepreneurship. We're here to provide you with the services needed in order for you to propel, especially in these uncertain times. If you need a business plan, if you need lawyers, we're going to be able to give you more information throughout this telecast that will help you in this process. So my name is Norville Barrington, and I look forward to connecting with you in a couple of moments. Thank you.